All right. We are here with the legendary, incomparable NBA legend,
There we go. I'm Bill.
Grateful
Yes,
Dead
I love
super
sports and
fan.
music, and I love Jason. Wow, what an incredible deal you guys have got going there. I am so lucky to be a small part of it because I live at the intersection of sports and music. And when I saw what you guys were doing, I said, wow, how can I be a part of that team? My whole life has been the drive, the search for being part of a special team. And now with the International Sports and Music Project, I have found it. And your videos, your work, your efforts around the world are just spectacular. I can never thank you enough, Jason. What an honor and a privilege for me to be here today on your show. And what a cool background you got, man. Did you get that? Did you get that headband from Carlos Santana?
I wish I did. I got it actually in a market in Rwanda on an
Really?
ISMP trip. Yeah, I'll have to get you one.
You have to get me one. Yeah. Okay. Well, I need something.
Yes. Well, thank you, Bill, for you're not just a small part, you're a huge part of what we're doing, and
No. So if you're going to wear your headband, maybe I should wear mine for a little bit.
love it.
Look.
You look great. So, based off what you're saying, you obviously live at the intersection of sports, music, activism, and that's why we're so grateful and thrilled to have you as part of the team. I thought maybe we'd start with a quote from your book. And I know you've spoken about this, but it fits so perfectly into this conversation. Music, basketball, it's all the same. It all rolls into one. What did you mean by that? And how do you view the connection between sports and music?
All the elements for each are the same. The differences are easier to articulate. The differences are you really don't have, when you're in a band, when you're doing the music, you really don't have an opponent, but you have a standard of excellence, a standard of perfection to perform and to be at your best when your best is needed. But when there's a sporting event, there's another team out there that's trying for the same prize and honor and glory that you're searching for. So, and there are different variables. But you can also say that there's, in the world of music, when you're trying to create something very special, that you're always dealing with the forces of evil and the people who do not want you to be smiling on a cloudy day. And so one of the things that I've learned over the course of my life, a life that's now spanned 67 years, after growing up in a classical music household, and then transferring myself, my parents never made this transfer, but I made the transfer in the early 60s to rock and roll. And all the guys in the early days, whether it's the Beatles, and all of their break-offs, whether it's the Rolling Stones, whether it's Bob Dylan, whether it's John Fogerty, whether it's the Grateful Dead, whether it's Jimmy Cliff, quickly transitioning into Carlos Santana and Jackson Browne and the Beach Boys and all the different bands over the course. Now, I'm in this conversation, I know I'm going to forget some people, but that, and so I just realized that I left out Crosby, Stills and Nash. And the Mamas and the Papas and the Byrds and all the early guys, John Sebastian and Pete Seeger and all the Joan Baez. I mean, it's just going to keep coming up all the time in this conversation. But the culture that I grew up in was one of curiosity, exploration, and experimentation. And that's what sports is about, and that's what music is about. That's what education is about. So much of my life, is about that. And so the way it comes together and the inspiration that I get from both, I get inspired from playing sports, participating in sports, from watching sports, the same with music. And all the different things. I grew up playing the horns, the baritone, the French horn, the trombone, the trumpet,
Wow.
and the tuba, and all the different horns. But then I transitioned, when I met the Grateful Dead, I transitioned into drums and the percussive arts. And then when I was in my late 30s, that was quite a long time ago, I had to have my first ankle fusion. And I've spent half my adult life in the hospital. I spent most of my adult life in constant chronic pain, joint pain, bone pain, and then ultimately the nerve pain that destroyed my life with my spine failure and collapse. But back in 1990, when I had my first ankle fusion, I was 37, and I realized that I was going to have to be sitting down most of the rest of my life. And so I made the conscious decision and choice at that point to take up classical piano, and in conjunction with the drums, rock and roll drums. And so I just learned to love that. And one of the things that I learned over the course of my life, I was the classical pianist in the early days, and the composers, Handel, and then Beethoven were at the very front of doing benefit concerts to help the less fortunate. Handel with the orphan children, and then Beethoven for all different kinds of causes. And so, and that ability of people to use their platform, the platform to change the world for the better. Because that was the world that I grew up in. My dad was a social worker. My mom was our town's librarian. My dad also had secondary and tertiary jobs. He was an adult educator at night, and he was a music teacher on the weekends. But we grew up in a household that was very concerned about what was going on in the world and all the different issues. And then, even though there was never any discussion in our family about sports, because my parents had zero interest in sports, I quickly found sports through my first coach by following my older brother, now deceased, around. And my first coach was our town's fireman. And he was a volunteer coach at our elementary school for 59 years.
Wow.
59 years, every student, every grade, every level, every sport, all year round. Never took a penny. When he died a few summers ago, after volunteering for 59 years, he was the richest guy I've ever known. And I can't tell you if he knew anything about sports. He never knew life. He knew life, he knew community, and he knew team, and he knew making things better for individuals, which spread to the team, because the strength of the team is the strength of the individuals. And so I had this culture of, wow, we're all in this together. We're a team. This is about us working together. And then as I evolved in sports and found Bill Russell, my favorite player ever on and off the court to this day, and then Muhammad Ali, the champ. And these guys who live their life to make other people's dreams come true. Now, they were the greatest of champions in their own right, but they were not about stuff. They were not about material accumulation and physical gratification. They were about substance. They were about the team, and they were about people being able to create their dreams. And they saw the worst of humanity in their own individual lives growing up, and they decided to do something about it. Now, quickly, while this is all happening in the early 60s, and little Billy is 9, 10, 11 years old, and he's finding these incredible heroes, then I'm starting to find the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and Phil Oakes and Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie and all these other people who were doing the same thing with music. And I love the music. I can remember as a young boy, as I was learning how to prepare to deliver peak performance on command, which is the ultimate skill of the champion, and that my parents had a record player, and they had some records, and the one that I would always put on when I needed to really get going was Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, with the crash of thunder and the booming cannons, and I would just listen over and over and over again. It was just absolutely incredible. And later on in life, when I started studying Tchaikovsky for the piano, And I saw Hershey Felder perform Tchaikovsky's one-man play there, Tchaikovsky's Life and Dreams. It was just absolutely spectacular how that all came back together. But through the course of the 60s and how that all played out with the sense of being able to tell the stories, with the sense of delivering a message and urging, working for positive change and using the platform that you have and living a life that has purpose and cause and meaning. Because my choices in life have evolved over the course of these now 67 years to starting out in the early days with hope, opportunity, and purpose, which led ultimately to pride, loyalty, and gratitude, and then ultimately to the constant battle that I have today, which is working on my own health, building the community around us, and then living a life of service. Because the nicest thing that anybody ever said about me as a basketball player was that I helped my teammates play better ball. And what I learned from all the heroes and role models that I had, that I chose, because, you know, whether it was sports with Russell and Ali, whether it was music with all the guys I've already listed, or whether it was the world of politics and social issues, whether it was Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Sergeant Schreiber. These were people who all lived a life of service. And they lived by the mantra that you can never have a perfect day in your life without doing something for someone who will never be able to pay you back. That ability to happily do that, to happily lift the burden, to ease the pain. There is nothing like that on earth. And so as I try every single day to roll everything into one and to live in honor and tribute to all my heroes, who most of those people who I've mentioned, I've met all of them, all the ones who were not assassinated. And I'm sure I would have met them too, because, you know, basketball has provided me with, and now television has provided me with this incredible platform, which I have a responsibility to use. Because I know you speak about gratitude, which is an ultimate pinnacle in your life. And you reach that point when you understand the importance of gratitude, and you recognize how many people have done so much to help others to get us to where we are. They try to feed us this nonsense about this is about individual ruggedness and bootstrapping, getting it done on your own. Ridiculous. Nobody makes it to the top alone. It's all because of the network that we have and the people who are willing to help us. And that's why, as we're creating our own dreams and building our own network, it's important to read and study greatness. And one of the really wonderful stories about that sense of gratitude, comes from Willie Nelson. And his book, It's a Long Story, has just endless epiphanic moments in Willie's young life where it wasn't happening. And he wasn't going to be what he wanted. And he was really struggling. But invariably, what happened to Willie, or what happens to all of us, is that along the way, some complete stranger with no agenda, with no thought about, okay, what's in this for me, comes along right at the critical time in your life and says, okay, here's $10. Here's a bus ticket.
Yeah.
Here's breakfast. Whatever it is to get you over that next little hurdle, that step that you can't figure out how you're going to make that happen. And so as we bring it all together in this world of music and that sense of power, and just think for a moment of the Grateful Dead coming together and from nothing, and the similarities between basketball, where the ball by itself does nothing, the instruments, the drums, the organs, the keyboards, the guitars, the microphones, by themselves they do nothing. But once the artists get a hold of it and they start making it an extension of their mind, and they start expressing themselves, and anything is possible. And particularly when that surge starts happening, when the band just is bringing it up and they're going faster and faster, and they're just reaching that crescendo of euphoria and exaltation. And it's what we all live for there. It's just absolutely spectacular where that flesh-eating low end just comes right through you. But it's not just the Grateful Dead. It's that ability of all these different artists. And you think back over the course of just my lifetime. I can't speak about the times before I was born back in the 40s and the 30s and the problems that were going down then. But I'm sure there were similar aspects of sports and music having an incredible ability to inspire, to lift people up, to change the world. But just think, all the different people, you know, Bob Dylan, George Harrison. I don't know if you've seen that movie out there right now, George Harrison, Living in a Material World.
The Scorsese one, right?
Yeah, I don't know who did it, but it's 6 hours of George Harrison just on fire. And then what they did in 1971 in Madison Square Garden with the concert for Bangladesh, in unison with Ravi Shankar. And then all the different aid concerts, Live Aid, Farm Aid, Live Earth, Earth Aid, every single one of these guys, and Jackson Browne, Bonnie Raitt, is at every single one. And I can remember during the 70s when there were so many battles going on every front. And there was never a time that Jackson Browne and Bonnie Raitt weren't there. And I want to just recommend another book here about the challenges that we face in trying to fight these forces of evil, which simply will not go away. And the book that comes to mind here with Jackson and Bonnie is The Wildness Within, written by Kenneth Brower, about his dad, David. And it's about all the environmental battles around the world that David, who was a Berkeley native, and he just saw the world. He said, we've got to save this special place. And he was willing to do anything and everything. And then this book just captures it magnificently, The Wildness Within, leading into, though, the forces of evil that have been mentioned before here on this show. And so as we try to understand these forces of evil, it's critical to know the history of our country. And Jill Lepore's book from just a couple of years ago, just literally 18 months ago, it came out, These Truths, which is an 805-page masterpiece of the history of the United States. And it will give you a tremendous understanding of what it is that we're up against and how we have to keep going here. So when you think of all the people I've already mentioned, and then you come back with the Rolling Stones, and you come back with Neil Young and John Mellencamp and the Rex Foundation of the Grateful Dead, and then Steve Wozniak, who got it all started with the technology aspects, and his funding of the US Festival out there, Al Gore, what he was doing with Live Earth, and Bob Geldof, and all these different people. And I forgot to mention John Lennon when he went and did the peace rally there for John Sinclair. John Sinclair was sentenced to 10 years in jail for nothing. And the world just went crazy there. Phil Oakes showed up, and Bob Seger, and Stevie Wonder, and all kinds of other great people showed up and said, we're not going to take this nonsense anymore. And sure enough, when people stood up and when people spoke out, John Sinclair got out of jail. But how does he get his life back out there? Roger Waters with The Wall, all these different things. And then what Bob Dylan has done over the course of his career. I've got so many pictures in my mind, so many images throughout the house here. And, of Bob standing up and singing the songs. Now, he's not going to tell you what they're about. That's right. That's for you to decide. But the pictures and the words, they speak volumes. And it's just incredible. And I loved it when Bob, on the 50th anniversary of Amnesty International, Bob donated his time, his service, his talents, and his copyrights to 65 different artists who reached out and sang particular songs of the incredible repertoire of Bob Dylan, and all the proceeds in a 3 CD. Are you old enough to remember CDs, Jason?
I am.
Well, anyway, they donated all the proceeds from the Chimes of Freedom Project to Amnesty International, and the incredible work that they do trying to right the wrongs of the world, all the things that have been sung, all the songs that have been sung, all the games that have been played, and Neil Young's Bridge School and the No Newt concerts. The power of music, the power to heal, the power to force positive change, what Bob Dylan did with hurricanes. But really what all of these guys do every single moment of their lives. And that's the challenge for all of us, is to live that life of excellence, that life of honor, a life of sacrifice, a life of discipline, to where other people's challenges and issues have an impact on what happens in your own life. And that's why two of the most important elements of one's own character are a sense of empathy and a sense of sympathy, to understand what it's like out there for everybody else. Because the level of inequality that we have in the world today, I'm not sure it's ever been more extreme. And we have to use the leverage and the power that whatever it is that we have, and to do everything that we can to change that. Because when just a couple people have everything and most everybody else has nothing, that's not the way teams work. And so the ability to be involved, to be that engaged citizen, and to step to the front and say, what can I do to help? Or even better, I'll take care of this. And one of the first things that each and every one of us can do is make sure that we never miss an election. So there's a huge election coming up in just a little bit here, less than 100 days, November 3rd. And in the last election, the last federal election that we had, more than 100 million people chose not to vote. More than 100 million in an election that was decided by 77,000 votes. The fate of the world is on the line in the balance. Everybody is part of this, and everybody has to be someone who will say, what can I do to help? I'll take care of this. Let's get going.
Love it, Bill. Love it. So much to unpack there. You have been getting involved in trying to make the world a better place for a long time. And I'm curious, as you were watching Bill Russell and Muhammad Ali and seeing what they were doing, and all the musicians that you mentioned and seeing what they were doing, and I apologize for some noise here in Brooklyn. At what point was there a moment or a first act, whether at UCLA or before then, when you decided this is what I'm about? I don't care if I need to take on personal risk. I'm going to stand up and speak out for the things that I believe in.
There's risk in everything. There's risk in my taking a phone call. You never know where it's going to lead. There's a risk in getting out of bed in the morning. And you have to learn to embrace the risk and the uncertainty and the doubt and the hesitation and the fact that, hey, none of this might work. But you make the decision that, okay, this is the right thing to do. And so, and that's where the confidence comes in, to go out and use whatever it is you have to make the positive contribution. One of the endlessly great things I learned from Bill Russell was that in basketball, in life, at every moment, you can always make a positive contribution to the cause. And so here's a situation when you look at what Bono has done, you look at what Pete Seeger has done, and Joan Baez, and all their willingness to, and Muhammad Ali, and the risk, and Colin Kaepernick, and all the people who have said, look, this is the life we live. This is the game we play. This is the show we put on. And that show that game, that life, it not only is your expression and your reflection, your broadcast of who it is that you are, but what it means to other people. And one of the remarkable things that happens to me in my life is that when I'm out and about, and we're not allowed to do that right now. We follow all the rules of the CDC and the doctors and the scientists. Stay at home, shelter in place, wear the mask constantly, work on our own personal health. But when I am able to go out over all these years, I would encounter people who were part of the different things, the different events of my life. And they would come up to me, and I'm a public person. I mean, I'm out there, I'm in the airports, I'm in the hotels, I'm in the arenas, I'm in the convention halls. I'm everywhere all the time. And people would come up to me and with just this wide-eyed, dazed look on their face, and they'd look at me and they'd say, I was there, Bill. I was there. And when you're there and it happens, wow, you know, that moment stays with you forever. But that gives you the confidence when the team comes together. And that's one of the things that's most impressive about the efforts of your group, the International Sports and Music Project, and how you guys have been there. You've been out there, and from your earlier experiences that you realize this overwhelming need to feed people, the need to educate people, the need to provide just the basic necessities of life to so many different people around the world. And what you're doing out there, and I salute you, and I congratulate you, but I also encourage you to keep going and always understand how you don't start at the top and you don't start on the fringe. You start with the core. You start with yourself, and then you move out. It's like when you're trying to become a top basketball player. First of all, you got to beat everybody in your family. Then you got to beat everybody on your block. Then you got to beat everybody in your neighborhood. Then you got to beat everybody in your school. You got to beat everybody in your town, and then you move on to what's next. And so, and the ability of all these different guys, you know, who've been able to stand up there, to see what Willie and John Mellencamp and Neil Young and all the guys did with trying to rescue the farmers who were up against it and still up against it, and they're still going strong, and they never missed. The bridge school that Neil had, but for all the disabled children who could not get the proper education and the services and the help that Neil would fund himself and do whatever he could to make that difference in our life that allows us to keep moving forward. Because I don't care what direction we're going, as long as it's forward. And I'm constantly searching for opportunities in my life where I can do that, where I can move forward and help other people move forward as well. And that always comes back to a life of service.
Yeah. And from things you've told me and things I've read, it seems like sports and music obviously have been huge throughout your life, but they've also helped you get through moments of hardship. And that's a big part of why we exist, is to find kids who are going through hardship and to give them a little bit of an out merely by giving them an opportunity to do what they love, whether it's play basketball or play drums or anything in between. What do you think?
Jason, have you ever read the book by Stubbs Terkel, Hope Dies Last?
I haven't, but you keep giving me amazing book recommendations, Bill, so keep them coming.
You need to study how other people have done this, because this point will be driven home when you read these truths, because it's the same battle all along the way. Battles of inequality, of racial injustice, of selfishness, of greed, of exploitation, all the negatives that I try to separate myself from and immerse myself in the positive aspects of the world of sports and the world of music. And to be able to live in that culture where there's so much good, where it gives you that belief that tomorrow is worth fighting for. And then you learn the stories of all the individuals who make up the culture that we're trying to dive into and immerse and wrap ourselves all in. And then we are motivated, and ultimately motivation has to be the sustained champion. Motivation has to come from within. Mm. Then you have to have the basic elements of the skill package, which are balance and quickness, creative imagination, and empathy and sympathy. You have all of those mastered, anything is really possible. But then the confidence that comes from, yes, the inspiration of others showing you that this can be done, of Joan Baez standing up and singing. And I don't know if you saw her last tour. I was devastated when Joan said she was going to stop because she was concerned about the quality of her performances. And we went to a bunch of the last tour, and we couldn't. It was better than ever, and it was so full of life and joy and hope, and that gives you confidence, because when people stand together, and when I look at what the NBA is doing right now, what ESPN is doing right now, this is the culmination of a dream. Our job is to not let it stop. Our job is to see it through. But when we were growing up and fighting the forces of evil all the time, and being pushed back and being beaten up, and Don Lewis was just getting pummeled and getting his head broken open, his body just smashed, and all the different freedom riders and all the people who were out there on the front lines, in these huge battles, and now we're there at this moment in history with these 5 simultaneous crises just coming to a head here, with COVID-19, the economic collapse, the social justice awakening, which is fantastic, and Black Lives Do Matter. And then you've got the climate change issue, and you've got the species extinction factor that we're facing head on right now. And all of these things, they all roll into one. And we want to keep going. All I ever wanted in my life was more. I wanted more sports, more music, more life, more love, more family, more everything. More Jason Steinberg, more International Sports and Music Project. And we're living that right now. Because when you turn on the television and you get the support from the powers that be at the NBA and the powers that be at Disney and ultimately at ESPN, whoa, the coverage and the empowerment and that level of confidence that it gives you, that, well, if they can do that, I can do that. That's how it moves forward. And that inter-team competition, the inter-team rivalry, the inter-team push and the surge forward here. And then that ultimately comes back to the determination, the discipline, the perseverance, and the persistence to keep this whole thing going and moving to a better place, where you wake up and you say, well, okay, we're here today. How can we make it better by tomorrow? Let's get to work. We've only got 18 more hours in the day.
Love it. So if athletes or musicians or concerned individuals were wondering what they should be doing, how they could be activists, how they can push things forward in the way you're describing, what advice would you give them, Bill?
Constantly search for, find, and learn from master teachers. And that task never ends. Join a group. Join a team. In your path forward in life, I've had to start over completely 21 different times because of the physical challenges that I faced. Playing basketball, that was the easiest part of my life. Academics were the next easiest part. My challenges have been orthopedic health. I was born with birth defects in my feet, tore up my body playing ball. 38 orthopedic operations, replaced knees, hands, wrists don't work, spine replaced, rebuilt, all different kinds of stuff, tons of hardware in there. But I'm alive and I'm still going. And but my life changes all the time. And in those 21 different times, I've come up with my own plan as to how I'm going to get somewhere, how I'm going to get what I want. And that is based on the ability to create a dream, formulate what it is that your passion is, and what it is that you want. And then you got to find a teacher. And the best teacher to find is someone who's on the way back from where you want to go. Just rewind all the guys' names I've already talked about in this show today. And then join a team. You got to be on a team. And that's why I've joined the International Sports and Music Project, because I love what you guys are doing. I make my choices based on people, passion, and purpose. And that's why I'm on your team as a volunteer. And then you've got to immerse yourself in the culture. Now, the culture is always going to change. But, I've been watching the NBA right now and the restart and the rumble down in Orlando, and I've just seen so much good. Such fantastic level of skill and athleticism and talent and teamwork. I just love what the Toronto Raptors are doing, what the San Antonio Spurs are doing, the Phoenix Suns, the remarkable turnaround there. And then you've got the older guard, the favorites, LeBron and Anthony Davis, and you got Giannis in Milwaukee, and you got the Celtics, and you got all these other, the Blazers are playing fantastic out there. And so the culture that those guys have created, and that culture which we can create for ourselves, which we can emulate. And one of the great things about the technological revolution that has changed all of our lives, enabled us to even have this show, is that it brings people together. And yes, there's been incredible disruption in the world, but every time there's disruption, there's two different types of disruption. There's the disruption that just seeks chaos for the sake of chaos, an individual gain, or there's the disruption to take an old way that can be improved upon. I choose to be a part of improvement for a better tomorrow. And then that culture has to be shared. It has to be embraced. You dive right in and you commit yourself and understand that the strength of the whole team is the foundation of the individuals and the foundation that has been set. And what you guys are doing with the International Sports and Music Project in building your foundation to get started, because you guys are just getting going on this, and then the ability to sustain it, because that's what we all want. How do we keep this going? But that ultimately comes back to who we are as individuals. Because if we have the personal character, human values, it takes talent to get to the top. It takes character to stay there. Never measure yourself by what you have done, but rather by what you could have or should have been able to do. Those who are not willing to risk going too far will never know how far they can go.
Wow.
You'll never learn what you don't want to know. And there are no rewards for settling for something that you don't want. And so as you have this incredible opportunity now to stand up, join everybody else who's standing up and say, we're not going to take this nonsense anymore. And then it ultimately will come back down to everyone else's sense of honor and willingness to sacrifice and discipline, because that's what makes teams work. That's what makes the cause goes. And to see that Black Lives Matter is the largest social organization in the history of our country, and that is just a spectacular accomplishment. And I urge you to read The Overstory by Richard Powers, last year's Pulitzer Prize winner in fiction. Now, I'm not generally a fiction reader, but on other people's recommendations, I do read occasionally fiction. I like biography and history. But I did read The Overstory, and it was just tremendous. The ability of storytellers to create that image in your mind and to be able to put sentences or paragraphs and chapters and to tell that story. And that's what you guys are doing right now. And when I first saw your stuff, that's what drew me in. I saw the children. I saw them running. I saw them playing. I saw them dancing. I saw them drumming. I saw them smiling. I saw them happy. I saw them fulfilled. I saw them seeing a better tomorrow in their own lives. And when you witness that, your response is always the same. What can I do to keep this going? I applaud you. I salute you. I am so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to keep the International Sports and Music Project going, because you guys are on top of the world already and so young and just getting started. What a story. International Sports and Music, the project. Let's get going. What can I do? I'll take care of this.
You're the best, Bill. We're already reaching so many more people because you're a part of this, and I'm so grateful that you are. So thank you, and thank you for making the time yet again today. Maybe as just one last question, if other sports, music, activism enthusiasts such as ourselves are interested in getting involved, what could they do?
What you do is trying to find your way and trying to understand the challenges that we face in building our network. Number one, don't be afraid. And you can follow this project here on social media, International Sports and Music Project. You can tell your friends all the time. You can become a volunteer yourself, as I am, a volunteer. You can make a contribution, as I have myself. And we're always looking to build, we're always looking to expand. And most importantly, we're looking here and everywhere how we can improve ourselves. Because when we get better, other people get better. What you're doing is exactly what I believe in, what I understand epitomizes the best of the world. It's very much like solar energy, and it's very much like riding your bike. Solar energy and riding your bike, it's good for me, but it's good for you too. And when it's good for me and you, that means it's good for everybody. And so if it's good for all of us, why don't we do more of it? Here we go. Let's play some music. Let's have a game. Let's celebrate the wonders of nature. Let's be the boy in the bubble, Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, the Grateful Dead. Yes, the wonders, the miracles of life and nature. Here we go, all rolled into one. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Thanks so much for having me, Jason. You have a terrific time, and you let me know how I can ever help.
Thanks so much, Bill. Really, really grateful for you, and can't wait to see what we can do together.
Here we
Appreciate
go.
You.
It all rolls into one.
Love it. Love it. Thanks again, Bill.
Thank you, Jason. Yes.